Good day, everyone. Good day to those of us joining us virtually. My apologies for coming in late. We'll go right ahead to start. I hope we put on the generator so that we can have some, please. No more water. Yes. All right, if you're joining us virtually, good day to you. Welcome to Human Resource Management. Try as much as you can to ensure that you are attentive in class and you're participating. On my own end, I'll try to make it engaging. If you have any questions, if at any point in time you cannot hear me, please just send the chat and it will be fixed. Thank you very much. And finally, please put in your full name as attendance when you come into the room. Okay, thank you. For the sake of those joining virtually, I will sit, stand, depending on, and I hope that you can hear me. Can you all hear me, please? Let me know. Can I get any response online? If you can hear me, please let me know so I know how loud my voice should be.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to Human Resource Management. I always like to start my class by asking why you are interested in building a career in HR. But we're quite a lot, both those of us virtually and in class. So I will just like give one or two thoughts around why I think that people take a course in human resource management. And if you are in that cluster, just raise up your hands. All right, so I'm here because I want to just take a course, have the certificate, have it as evidence in my CV so I can get a job in HR. It's an okay reason. I mean, everybody is claiming vision in HR now. Like you had a vision where you were told you just want to have it in your CV that you have HR. Okay, I mean, it's a reason and it's good. Okay, I'm here because I have always wanted to build a career in human resource management. Okay. It's a good reason. I'm here because the way I see these HR people, they look like they have so much power. It's like all power belongs to them in every organization. And I need to be part of the power plug. That's why you're here. Okay. Well, there are no good and bad reasons, but hopefully, I hope that as we progress in class, I keep thinking it's a touch screen. I hope that as we progress in class and as we, those of us joining virtually on the chat box, please just let me know why you're interested in taking a course in human resource management. I hope that as we progress, I would have been able to inspire better reasons, more valuable reasons, and you could still retain your reason, right? But I just hope that as we progress, there will be an inspired value to why you have to sit in class 2, 3, 4 hours for this course. Great, so we'll just go right ahead and talk about something that is common in every organization, right? Who can tell me some of the common things? If you go into any organization on earth, tell me one thing you will find. If you walk into any company, any organization, any establishment, you find people, okay? What else would they have in common? What else do organizations have in common aside inclusive of people? Vision. They have an objective they want to attain, purpose, and they have structure, right? Not all organizations have dedicated team of HR, especially growing organizations. Not all, or startups, but they have people, they have purpose, they have objective, and some form of structure. right? Even if the structure is just the CEO or the entrepreneur that started that business. So every organization uses variety of capital. And when we're talking of capital in terms of people, we're referring to it as human capital. There's also the financial capital, monetary capital. So every organization has different resources, whether in terms of brain resources, mental resources, human resources, or monetary resources, or machineries, equipment. They are all forms of resources. And all of these resources, cash and valuables, they translate it and transform it to an output that helps them to achieve their goal. Is that not so? Now, but one thing that cuts across all establishments is people, like we rightly said. And so when we're looking at human resource management, I'm going to give us three different perspectives in defining or understanding what is human resource management. Formally, and by formally, I mean FORMALLY, not with the E. In a formal form, human resource management is defined as managing people from point of entry into an organization to point of exit. That whatever, managing employees within the workspace. That's what is called human resource management, formal definition of human resource management. Another perspective or definition of human resources looks at human resources from the accumulation of the technical know-how, the talents, the competence, the skills that exist in an organization. Come in, please. So when we're looking at an organization, we're saying, what is the value of its human resources? What we are saying is that what is the value of the skills, the competencies, the knowledge, the technical know-how that exists in that organization? What is the summation of all of that, right? Now, there's a perspective of human resources that is referred to as human capital management. And human capital management is the totality of the know what, know how, care why. These three reasons. Know what, do people, do they know what they are doing? Do they know how to do what they should be doing? Do they care about why they are doing what they should be doing? So the summation of these three forms, know what, care why, know how, is also referred to as human capital. So when you have a group of people in a workplace that know what they are doing, that know why they are doing what they are doing, that care about the cause, why they are doing what they should be doing, and understand why they should be doing it, or care why, and know how, that is what is referred to as human capital management. And what we found so far is human capital management is more valuable than physical assets or any other resources that organizations have. Because if organizations have the best of softwares and machines, and the human beings who are going to operate those machines do not know how, are those machines going to be of any value? If they do not know what they should use the machines for, are they going to be of any value? Will they be of any value? No. The machines will not be of any value. The worth or the value of those machines or those assets is totally dependent on how the people at work are able to transform it and translate it. I remember this funny joke of a graduate who finished with first class. I think he read biomedical engineering, and that deals with, medical equipment. He came out with a first class, brilliant. And on his first day, in the job, they took him to the warehouse where they had all the machines. And during his interview, they asked him about a particular machine. And he broke that machine down. He described it. He talked about the use, talked about all the parts of that machine to the detail. And then they took him to the warehouse and they expected him to point at the machine that he has detailed up there. They passed the machine. He didn't say anything. They came back, they passed the machine again. He didn't say anything. They now asked him that machine that you talked about, you detailed us to us out there, up there. Among all of these equipment, can you point where the machine is? And then he opened up and said he has never seen the machine. Or he came out with a first class. He just finished an interview where he broke the machine down. But he has never seen that machine. It's not his fault. It's Nigerian factor. So unfortunately, at that point, Nigerian factor is not going to give him a job, right? At that point, whose fault is it? So the aim of this narrative is not to find whose fault or who's not fault. The aim of what I'm saying is to help us understand that when we're talking about human capital management, we're saying it's a summation of people who know what, who know why, who know how, and who care why. If there's any gap in any of these 4 areas, then there's a deficiency in human capital, right? So we will get to the point where we're talking about Nigerian factor in our human resources and no Nigerian factor. So I've given 2 perspectives of human resource management, or 3. I've said human resource management is concerned with managing employees from point of entry to point of exit. Human resource management is a summation of skills, competencies, knowledge, talents that exist in a workforce. Human resource management human capital management is also the summation of care why, know what, care why, know how. These are the 3 major perspectives in describing or defining human resource management. Now, human resource management is very peculiar. And when I say human resource management in this perspective, I'm not just talking about employees in terms of headcount. So we have 700 employees working in this organization. No, I'm saying in terms of the amount of talent and competencies that exist in that organization. It's very unique, very peculiar. And it's always important as HR that you understand the peculiarity of human resources. Because when you don't understand the peculiarity of human resources, then you cannot optimize the value of your human resource, right? Understand that one of the peculiarities that no organization owns its human resources. No matter how much you pay your human resources, no matter how much you compensate them, no organization owns their human resources absolutely. And this is because people can, for whatever reason, leave their current employers and move ahead in life, either to another employer or to start out their own. And so if we understand as HR managers that no company owns any human resource as embodied in an individual, absolutely. The next question we'll always ask is, how do we retain our human resources? I'm not just talking of headcount, I'm saying, because those headcounts you are looking are embodiments of talents. Is that not so? They are embodiments of competencies. And so as HR, you must shift your mindset from seeing human beings as headcounts and seeing them as talents and competencies. And that for each one that leaves, for whatever reason, you are losing a talent or you are losing a competence, right? Human resources can walk over to other organizations. And when human resources leave, when people leave an organization, what do they leave the organization with? What is the one thing they leave behind? Hmm? When people leave an organization, what is the one thing they leave behind? Legacies. Well, yes, that could be one. Yeah, they create a space. We can always fill the space. But there's something they leave behind. What? Value. They go with it. Hmm? There's some that thing that you are boasting that only you does for them in their life. They go with it, literally. Give it some years. That's when you realize that they've gone with their reputation. A few times. There's something organizations like to boast about it. Salaries, that's the only thing they leave. Did they go with it? That's the only thing they leave behind, right? So when human resources leave, the only thing they leave behind is salary. That thing that you boast about and say, do you know how much I pay you? I will cut it, I will slash it away. You use it to threaten them. When they leave that very thing, that power you think you're using to hold them down, right? So we need to understand as human resource management, what is the value proposition of every employee at work? It weighs more than the salary, right? While we think that we pay employees 9 to 5, we actually are paying employees for their 24 hours, because when people start their jobs and they're dedicated, they eat, they drink, they sleep, everything about that job, right? If they have a challenge or the task, even when they have left it after 5 p.m., they go back with it where? In their minds. They are rushing up the next day because there's something they have to do. So employment is a form of modern slavery, but we enjoy it because we get paid, right? So we're not going to go into that debate. The value of human resources can grow and it can decline. It can grow when human resources are exposed to learning opportunities, challenging events, when they are put in the right job that fits or aligns with their interests, their passions, their knowledge, their experience. Human resources cannot be duplicated, right? A lot of times you hear some HR, if you go, we have 100 people waiting, they will replace you, but you would never have somebody like that person, because every human being is unique. So human resources cannot be duplicated. Why am I taking out time to explain to us the peculiarity of human resources? So that as HR managers, we are constantly faced with the question of how do we retain our human resources? The error myth that goes around is that, especially for startups and for small scale business organizations, is that they think that everybody in the world is looking for a job and anybody can be replaced. And then, but you see, the cost of replacing is actually higher than the cost of retaining. But a lot of company owners are not aware of it. The cost of retaining your current workforce is cheaper than the cost of having to hire and hire and hire and hire. Because aside from maybe other costs, each time you hire, you are starting all over. Each time you hire, you're starting all over. We're going to discuss all of that. But we need to understand that these peculiarities of human resources means that we should always work towards retaining our manpower, because it allows for continuity, it allows for growth, right? It allows for organizational growth and sustainability of the vision or the mission that our organizations stand for. Typically, for HRs who do not understand the peculiarities of HR, of the human resources they have at work, they tend to misuse it. There's a lot of abuse of power. There's a lot of high turnover. There is, maltreatment of employees, because the HR does not understand the value that their human resources bring to work. So let's look at our evolution. Where did human resource management as a field, where did it evolve from? Between 1890 and 1913, most of the industries existing at that time were more of the cotton milling, gold mining, Those were most of the organized structural industries existing, not that structured, but some form of organization. Now, the function of human resource management was not as robust as we have it today. In those times, the function itself was just restricted to paying wages to these laborers, and they were being paid every day. They come to work, they do what they need to do, they get their day's wages. That was how the labor force was structured at that time. So the function, there was no word or term like human resource. The function was more of a welfare officer. Now, between 1914 and 1939, laborers kind of started having one voice in what I would say union. They started coming together to make more demands. And so unionism started between 1914 and 1939. Now, because unionism had started and laborers were making more demands, there was a need for an evolution of that function of just that person paying wages to the person managing these unions, because there was no way you would just keep them quiet, because what was happening was they would come to work, they would down tools, they would shut the mills, they would say they will not work, they would spoil things. So there was no way we could just keep them quiet. There was a need to manage those voices. And so that role evolved to the role of a labor manager, right? Now, between 1945 and 1979, there was more structure to workforce. People were now, when you say you want to work in an industry, there was some form of structure in terms of administration. And so that evolved again. The role of the labor manager evolved to becoming a personnel manager that involved a lot of administrative organization of the workforce. Now, between 1980, 1990 until date, we saw an evolution where the value of laborers, now we have started transiting from seeing people at work to just be laborers, but to be more of manpower. Now we are beginning to place more value on human beings who we are working. And we are beginning to see then industry experts, industrialization was beginning to take shape, and the people that are working were now being seen as a resource. And when you don't manage your resources well, you lose out, right? So because they were being seen as a resource and not just as laborers who deserve their wages, but as a resource that needed to be harnessed. Do you see the difference? There's a difference between when somebody is just seen as a laborer and this person will do work today, will pay him, than when the person is seen as a form of resource. What do you do to your resources? When you have resources, what do you do to them? You manage them, you invest them. When you invest them, they produce more, right? So the human element at work was now being seen as a form of resource. So there was a need for that evolution because questions were coming up. How do we manage now the term human resources? So the term human resources came up between 1980 and 1990 until date. There has been further evolution in the 20th century because beyond human beings just being seen as a resource, we now have terminologies like human capital management, terminologies like people and culture managers. We have terminologies like HR business partner. Who has heard that term before? HRB. If you go online, you're looking for HR roles, you will see things like HR business partner. It's still just HR. But where that is pointing is more value on the function and the role of HR. The value comes in the place of understanding that the role of HR is no more just hire, fire, administrative, but the role of HR is now seen as an ongoing concern that contributes largely to business growth. It's no more a role that you say your role is just to hire. In fact, in a lot of organizations, big organizations, recruitment is outsourced. They have a full HR department, but they outsource their recruitment. They outsource their payroll. You'll now be wondering, okay, if a third party is doing recruitment for them and a third party is doing payroll, so what is HR doing? But they have a full department of HR. Why? Because we now understand that human resources should now be viewed as a business partner. That is when you get the best of human resources. Now, in this case, I'm not talking about the human beings. I'm talking about the function that manages human resources. So that's why some of the smart organizations who have been able to tap into this understanding are now seeing their human resource managers as HR business partner. So when they come together to make those top level, high level business decisions, the HR person needs to be there. Because there is a HR implication to every business decision. There's a recognition, an increased recognition of this fact. And so HR is no more that role in the organization that just collects directives and only does hiring and firing. But there is a lot of strategic decisions and solutions that can emanate from the HR department that would drive business growth, right? So this is the evolution of human resource management. While I must say that we are fortunate to be in the 20th century where a lot of value is now being placed on HR, but we're also now faced with, especially in these climes, in this part of the world, we're also now faced with high turnover rates, brain drain, thanks to Canada and UK. They are taking our human resources every day. People are jackering every day. You go into the bank, the person you met last week is not the person you are seeing. 5 people have gone. You go to the hospitals, 10 doctors have resigned. Yeah, and it's happening every day. So for us as HR, we are facing that big question: how do we retain our workforce? Human resource management is multidisciplinary, and when we say it is multidisciplinary, what we mean is that it draws its theories and norms from other fields, such as economics, sociology, psychology, accounts, management, right? Human resources is basically about managing employees. Employees are human beings. Sociology and psychology has to do with understanding or the study of human beings, man, and how man relates to their environment and why human beings behave the way they behave. Understanding sociology and psychology will help you better deploy human resource strategies. Because you are working with human beings, you need to understand how they behave, how they relate to their environment, how their environment influences their behaviors. Because it's behaviors that we are working with at work, right? So let's look at the functions of human resource management. Human resource management functions can be divided into operative functions and managerial functions. Operative functions are functions that, as HR, you will likely be involved with every day. And some operative functions include procurement. Procurement has to do with acquiring human resources. When you are recruiting, when you're hiring, when you're selecting, that's procurement. Development is how you build the capacity of your workforce. And that's under training, right? Training and ensuring an environment that accommodates learning. It's not just training. So when you say an organization is a learning organization, it means that that organization thrives or breeds a culture that accommodates learning. A lot of times when organizations say it, it's usually something they just have in a bubble or on the wall, one of their top missions. But really, if an organization is a learning organization, it means that people should be allowed to make mistakes and learn from their mistakes. If people are punished or penalized heavily for mistakes, guess what? No other person will want to learn. because it will be, the other time, the other person press Control AZ and this thing happened and they suspended him or her for 2 weeks. Let nobody go near, no, don't even ask. There was a story of top military personnel who built, like, there was an opening on the road, and then he built a slab to cover that place. And then he asked two of his officers, one, because it was a place people were passing. So he asked two of his officers to stay at each side of the slab until it dries. Now, he just gave that directive and said, stay here. When you're tired or when you can now be exchanged. So these officers resumed there every day. They just stay on those two officers. And then this senior officer passed on, and then another person came, another senior officer. Who came and said, why are people standing here? Sir, we are not the first people to start standing here. We have been assigned here. So any other person that comes assigned here just stands here and here. So they just continue the practice. Any senior officer that leaves, another person comes, continues assigning the two officers, one person to stand here, another person to stand here. Nobody knows the reason why. It just became a primary duty until years later. One person asked and said, why are we assigning two officers for the last 6 years to come and be standing here? They started doing research, started finding out this one until they got to the first two officers who ever stood there. It was those first two officers and said, the senior officer, our Oga, put a slab and said, when it dries, we should go. They didn't pass that information on. And nobody ever asked, because in the military, you don't ask. You only do what you are. So they have spent years, wasted human resources, manpower time, just doing nothing, protecting a dry slab so that nobody will pass there. It happens a lot in organizations. We do things, nobody has the right or the guts to ask how. It is just, this is how we have been doing it, and this is how we continue doing it. A learning organization is an organization that allows people to ask questions and allows people make mistakes, although guards because they are very costly mistakes. Allows people come, learn, grow, and make mistakes. So that's development. Compensation is probably the time of the month when you are paying salaries or you are paying incentives or merits, but utilizing is ensuring that everybody is doing what they are supposed to be doing. Maintenance is ensuring that there is order and there is structure in the workforce. The other part of human resource function is our managerial functions. Richard, can your hands are up. Let me show my screen again. Okay, hold on, let me set up this. Okay, just give me a minute to share my screen again. Okay. So Richard, you can put your question on the chat box. I can see that your hands are up. So the managerial functions are functions around planning the workforce, organizing the workforce, coordinating the workforce, providing HR, human resources related advice to management based on some managerial decisions or top executive decisions, motivating the workforce and controlling the workforce. Okay. So we've talked about the functions of HR. The next thing we need to look at is the scope of HR. Human resource has 8 scope. And by scope, I just mean areas. And each of these scope can be standalone. Now, when I say scope, it means that it's not function, it's eight human resources areas, and they can be standalone. When I say standalone, I mean that you can decide to build a career in each of these scope, and it's still, you are considered HR. Training and development is a scope in HR, and they are career professionals who are human resource professionals, but their specialization is just training and what? Development. Another scope is human resource planning, performance management, employee disciplinary administration. All these are individual scopes in HR and they are standalone. So you can hear people say that they're performance managers. It's still HR and it's just a scope. They are specializing in performance management, organizational development, compensation management, recruitment and selection, employee administration. You will see some legal professionals, lawyers, who are also HR, and they are specialized more in either employee administration or employee disciplinary administration, and they are also lawyers. So this 8 scope, have we heard of people we call payroll officers, payroll administrators? It's a HR field and it's a standalone field. So you can decide to build a career as a payroll administrator. It's not showing under that. Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. So do we have any question on the scope of human resource management? Training and development, human resource planning, performance management, employee disciplinary administration, organizational development, compensation management, recruitment and selection, employee administration. Or you're writing, but you will be giving your manuals, right? Soft copy. It has been published in your in the group. Are you serious? It's supposed to be the same. And so we'll pick this one and put there for them. Okay. So there's no scope of HRM there. There's no what? Is there or is not there? Okay. So we're projecting also now. Okay, the function is not there. Because no, we can do that because I really want us to do more of listening. And then this will also be shared on the platform. Okay. But I'm sure that the one you have is more detailed than what we have in class. So it will be more detailed. Is it different? Take my word that is more detailed. Because I've gone through that manual. So what's the difference between the scope we have here and the scope we have there? Okay. Okay. Okay, so we'll share both. I mean, so that we can all have, access to both materials. So let's talk about human resource planning. Human resource planning is a process of forecasting what an organization will need in terms of manpower in the near future. Human resource planning is about balancing the demand for labor with supply of labor. What do we call labor? Manpower. Wait, what is manpower? What is human resources? In this context, what is human resources? The human beings. What do we call human beings at work? Staff. Another name for staff. Employees. Great. I just wanted to check that you understand the context, and I like that you do that. So human resource planning is about balancing the demand for employees and the supply. Which part of management from secondary school do you hear demand and supply? Economics. That's why we say HR draws theories and norms from a lot of fields. So it's about balancing what your organization will need in terms of manpower and balancing it with supply. What do we need? Where do we get it from? How do we match what we need with where we'll get them from in the near future? And near future could be 6 months, 2 years, 1 year, depending on the situation. If, for instance, your HR policy states that people would retire at 55, and in 2023, you had 4 managing directors who celebrated their 54th birthday. Who can tell us the HR implication of that 54th birthday in 2024? Your HR policy states that anybody who gets to 55 will have to retire. And then in 2023, 4 of your managing directors celebrated their 54th birthday, and it was a big bash. Who can tell us the HR implication of that 54th birthday in 2024? Huh? You need to enter market, right? I like that. It means that in 2024, we're going to lose how many managing directors? 4. So when we are buying those big birthday cakes and planning the big birthday party, as HR, when we go back to our office, we are thinking, where are we going to replace 4 managing directors? Human resource planning is about forecasting ahead that in 2024, we are going to need 4 managing directors, and we're going to start from 2023 to balance the supply of 4 managing directors. Do you understand the definition of human resource planning now? You are planning your workforce. You are ensuring that there is no gap, that there is no, you always have adequate workforce at work. Because when there is shortage of manpower, that means operations will suffer. You won't be able to reach the goals that you have to reach as an organization. So if you have that basic understanding, human resource planning is a process of forecasting a firm's future demand and supply of the right type of people in their right numbers. If at the time you are, now each of the managing directors in the next year are going to lose 4 managing directors, you're also going to lose, because these things can happen simultaneously at different times of the year. Maybe they're supposed to retire in June, and then in say May before June, 20 of your core members will be passing out. And then in the marketing department, 2 ladies say they are getting married. One is going to join the spouse in Dubai. The other one, the husband said when they get married, she should stop work. Different things can just be happening at different times. that would require you to have a constant process of planning. So you constantly have to ensure that there is adequate manpower, right? So it's always a constant, how do we keep balancing demand and supply, demand and supply? Meanwhile, while all of this drama is going on, your managing director or your CEO has informed you that you're opening a new branch in Oyo State. The implication of that is you're going to need manpower there, right? So you are not just, in 2024, you are not just going to be looking for 4 managing directors. Then you'll be looking for 2 people, 1 person who got pregnant, you need a maternity cover. Then you need to look for 20 core members to replace the ones that are passing out. They are going to look for 50 people who are going to man the new place in Oyo. These are different kinds of jobs. And that is why we say you have to ensure that you have the right type of people in their right numbers, right? Because you can't go to your ED and say, sir, I'm not yet done trying to replace the 4 managing directors. Can I finish first before I look for the 50 people that will man Oyo State new chapter? No, you have to balance demand and supply of your organization at every point in time. So when we're looking at the process of human resource, if it is X669, you want to put off your video. And please, if you're coming into the classroom, rename your device so that we will know who is in class. Infinix X669, please put up your video. So let's look at the process of human resource planning. The first process is analyzing your environment and understanding the current state of your HR. Understanding the current state of your HR is identifying where possible manpower gaps can come up. And it could range from any situation. Your head of finance has been telling you how she has been applying for a postgraduate studies. As she's telling you and as you are celebrating and saying, I pray that you will get it, you know you are going to lose somebody soon, right? So that the day you are telling her congratulations for her, she has gotten the admission, you have to start looking for a replacement, right? 2 people are telling you, I just want to tell you something, secret HR, I'm 3 months pregnant. Amazing. We love the babies. But it means that we're going to either look for a mat cover or get somebody within your maternity period that will have, so that work does not stop. You do not wait until it happens and then you are more shocked than them. It's incompetent. So you constantly need to analyze your current state, get information, find out, are there gaps that will be coming up in the future? And like I said, future may be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Forecast your HR needs. Forecast, you need to know who will be leaving, what reason, who will be moving where. Forecast if you're going to have manpower needs. The third step, when you have forecasted your HR needs, the next step, you need to forecast. So when you're forecasting your need, you're forecasting demand. After forecasting demand, you need to forecast supply. Where do we get them from? Where you will get 4 managing directors. Is it the same place you're going to get 20 core members? Are they in the same place? So you would see that by the time you're trying to forecast supply of labor, you're going to be deploying different strategies. Imagine that you are driving past Transcorp Hilton and you saw an advert, a job advert on a cardboard sheet written at the gate. We are looking for executive directors, apply within. If you know somebody or if you think you are fit for the job, would you want to apply? You want to apply? I said, imagine that you are driving past Transcorp Hilton and you saw an advert, a vacancy advert, written on a cardboard sheet on their gate saying, looking for executive directors, apply within. How many of us in class would want to apply if we meet that requirement? You'd apply? How many people would apply? What? Somebody was saying so. Does it make it look valid? Means that it's valid. But it will raise a lot of questions. The right people who have gotten to that height would not apply, because then it raises a lot of questions. So imagine that the same Transcorp Hilton was recruiting for 20 housekeepers and they posted it on LinkedIn. Do you think they will get the housekeepers applying if all they did was post that vacancy on LinkedIn? Do you think housekeepers would apply? Why wouldn't they apply? They are not likely to even see it. So when we're talking about supply of labor, you need to think of the kind of people or positions you want to, you have a demand for. That would inform you on the strategies for where you will get that supply. So you deploy different strategies for identifying demand for labor and different strategies for supply of labor. Different strategies. Because when we define recruitment, you will see that recruitment is a process that seeks to appeal to prospective candidates. And as HR, if your strategy of appealing is not the right strategy, you will only attract the wrong people. And a lot of times we make that mistake as HR and we blame it on the labor market. And it could just be that your strategy was not appealing enough. And so you are worried why you put up a vacancy there, 5,000 people applied, you could not get up to 2 people. It could be that your strategy was not, because recruitment is a process of appealing, but a lot of HR people do not know. They think that everybody in the whole world is looking for a job and waiting for only their company on earth. So they just keep making mistakes over and over again and wondering why they are not just getting the right people. We'll talk about that when we go into recruitment. Maya Esther, please put up your video. So the fourth process after forecasting your demand for labor and supply for labor is to develop the action plan. Already we've talked about some scenarios. How would you attract 4 managing directors? What kind of action plans would you bring up to attract managing directors? Happiness, please put up your video. What kind of action plans? If you have to hire 4 managing directors and 15 entry-level marketers, what kind of action plan would you introduce to attract managing directors and entry-level marketing officers? What we see that everybody on earth is not looking for a job now. What would you do? What would be your action plan? You advertise for the managing director. You advertise on what kind of platforms? LinkedIn. On, okay, mainstream media. Okay. What else will you do? What will you do to attract managing directors? Don't forget that managing directors, they are not sitting down holding their CV, walking around looking for jobs. Where are they? They are working, wherever they are working. So attracting them means you want to poach them from their current employers to your own employer. What will you do? Hmm? So you want to increase their compensation to attract them. It means that you first of all need to know what they are earning and the benefits, right? So you need information. Is that not so? Okay. Because if you don't have information, you may think that you're offering them the best. Meanwhile, you're not offering them what can even match what they are receiving, right? Would you have to go through all of this when you want to hire for the 15 entry-level marketing officers? Not likely. So you see that your action plan would really differ depending on the positions. So when we say develop action plans, you also need to look at the manpower that you want to hire. When you develop your action plan, the next thing is to adjust your HR policy if need be. There may be need to adjust your HR policy. It could be that, probably your policy states, in order to be gender balanced, that for every recruitment, women must be given 70% consideration. And then you have a particular situation where you may not be able to meet that policy demand. You may want to adjust your policy to reduce it from 70% to say 30%. It may be the other way around. Maybe you have a lot of men in your workforce, and now you want to be more gender responsive. And then you are saying you want to increase, gender consideration to favor women hiring. And so you want to tweak your policy and say, for every recruitment in the next 3 to 4 years, women must be given higher consideration, especially if the job already has a perception that is a male-dominated job, like an engineering job. On the average, when people say vacancy for engineering, it has the male perception. When you want to increase, female participation in that, you need to be very deliberate about it. That's why you see some vacancies, they will say women are strongly advised to apply. There are certain, if you work in the development sector, there are certain grants you want to apply for that they will ask you, as a grantee, what's the makeup of your workforce? What's the gender balance of your workforce? And if you have more males than females, you are not going to get that grant because they want to see a balance. For such organizations, if you're a grantee, you want to quickly hire females. And if your organization is one that is male, operating in a male-dominated area, you want to now be more deliberate. If you're asking yourself, what do we do to attract more females? Because if we just put up these adverts here, if 20 people apply, 19 and a half of them will be male. So you see, you start going out of your way. Some organizations will deliberately go to maybe female groups or reduce their standard of hiring or change some conditions of their workforce, right? Or do an internship program for female graduates because they want to attract more females into their workforce. All of these are different action plans. The next step is to set your budget and get your budget approved because some of the action plans may have budget implication. Like when we're saying we're going to find out the salary and increase if need be, that's a budget implication. So you may need to set your budget. After setting your budget, you get your budget approved. And then you adjust, control, review, and adjust your plan as the case is, depending on the situation. Prince says, how do you plan ahead for an expected event? Or is it more of a mental preparation? So you need to first a mental preparation, understanding that every employee is replaceable and not allowing an employee have an entire access to the whole knowledge base in that department or in that unit. So as HR, human resource planning helps us close the gap of unexpected situations. It doesn't mean that we're always 100% ready, because something could happen, but that's why it's human resource planning, right? When we go to the factors that can affect human resource planning, you will see uncertainties as one of the factors. So if we go to human resource demand forecast, so we say you need to balance demand and supply of labor. In demand forecast, we're answering the question, what makes organization demand for labor? Why do organizations hire? Why do they demand for labor? Why do organizations hire manpower? Why? Why do you think organizations demand for labor? To help. Yes, so to help them achieve their vision, but why do they need to hire people for whatever reason? What is that reason why they need people? For what? Yes, but that's very broad, right? I remember one CEO telling me that the reason why he wants to have 10,000 people in his company is because he wants to help reduce um, high employment rates. The question is, can he pay 10,000 people? That's good enough, but you are not government, right? Even government right now, they're asking for a minimum wage of how much? Of almost 794,000 for minimum wage. Is it realistic? We are complaining that our government is too expensive because we have a lot of people there doing nothing, right? So why do people hire? Why do companies hire? Even United Nations does not hire because they want to reduce unemployment rates. That's not a good reason. So why do organizations hire? To balance operations, to meet goals. Um, Eunice, human resources helps, human resource planning, not human resources. Human resource planning helps us to close the gap between demand for labor and supply of labor. Organizations hire to meet goals, for the goals to be achieved faster. We sound very broad in class and online. I want us to be very specific. Why would you want to hire? You have an organization now, a company. Why would you tell me one of the reasons why you would want to hire people? It's still very broad. Why can they say he will hire to make money? To reduce workload. Okay, that's more specific. That's more specific. To reduce workload, maybe too few people are doing much. That's more specific. It's not like we have been wrong, but we have been very broad. To increase output, your customer demand was 50%. This year it increased to 80%. You need more people to meet customer demand. That's very specific. I say even United Nations will not hire because they want to reduce unemployment, right? So let's not be very broad. To improve efficiency, having more hands is not going to help you improve efficiency, right? To meet up demand. But that demand has to be specific. You know, sometimes employees can complain and say we are doing too much. But if you sit down and do and understudy their job, you would realize that maybe they are not doing as much, right? So you may not necessarily hire because you don't have adequate manpower. It's on the job. You need to look at the job. And we're going to talk about it when we do job analysis. So as HR, you need to be very clear about why you want to hire people. If not, the head of marketing will just come to you and say, I need 40 people. Then finance manager will come and say, I need 5 people. Then PR, public relations, HOD will come to you and say, this year, I need 10 extra people. It's salary that will go into all those things. So as HR, you are a HR business partner, right? You are not just the voice for employees. You are representing your organization. So every decision you make has an implication. So let's look at some of the reasons here why we hire, why organizations hire. One of them could be competition. These are some external, because we say forecasting human resource demand, HR planning is ensuring that you have the right number of people doing the right things, right? So one of the reasons why organizations demand for labor could be competition. How can competition drive demand for labor? Competition in terms of specific skills. In the banking sector, 20 years ago, if you opened an account in Abuja, you cannot operate that account in Akure. But today, because of digitization, you can operate that account everywhere. That's 20 years ago. If you go into the banking hall, you will see mamas and papas doing manual. And then new generation banks came like Zenith Bank and GT Bank. And when these new generation banks came, if you enter their banking hall, you will get service as a customer at the brink of your finger, right? Then you go to old generation banks and there's a long queue. So service delivery was poorer. And so customers are moving from old generation banks to new generation banks. Competition started coming up in the banking industry. Not just that, when you go into the banking hall of the new generation bank, you will see them using app, using software, doing things, doing magic. You now go to a generation bank. So you know what happened? They met their mamas and papas in the banking hall. Do you know how to press this thing that these young people are pressing in the name of software? If you know, we keep you. If you do not know, we pay you severance package so that we can hire fine young boys and girls. As simple as I've said it, that's exactly what happened. So there was a competition in the banking industry for a particular kind of labor, young workforce, tech-inclined workforce. So at that point, they were not just hiring because they just want to increase efficiency or just because they want to reduce unemployment. All generation banks had to hire because they needed to meet up with the competition. And they were specific. They needed a younger workforce and they needed a young force who were tech savvy. Do you understand? Before now, organizations that needed marketers were more interested in marketers who had experience with face-to-face marketing, traditional marketing. Today, organizations are interested in what kind of marketers? Digital marketers, social media marketers. So you see how technology is driving demand for a particular kind of labor. Do you understand when I'm saying be specific on when you say why the organizations hire? Economic climate can also cause demand for labor. Now that there is an economic downturn, global downturn, and then companies are not able to meet up in terms of being able to pay up, making revenue, they are looking at how do we employ cheaper labor. That's economic climate affecting demand for a particular kind of labor. Laws and regulatory bodies can also influence demand for labor. Changes in technology and social factors can also affect demand for labor. Many years back, entry level age used to be between 22 to 26. Now, graduates are turning out at much younger age. So entry level has also dropped. So you see entry level 20 to 24. There's a shift. There's a social factor shift. So you see where social factor can also affect demand for labor. There are several reasons why companies demand for particular kinds of labor. Gender balance is also a reason. Companies, organizations are striving at being more intentional to have a gender balanced workforce. So organizations where they have more males are demanding for more females. So that's demand for a particular kind of labor because they want to acquire gender balance. Do we understand HR demand forecast now? Now let's go to supply. When we're looking at HR supply, we're saying we have identified that these are the reasons why we are demanding for labor. This is the number of people we are going to need. Where do we get them from? So when we're looking at HR supply forecast, we are trying to answer one question. Where do we get the people we need from? And you could get people internally or externally. When you want to hire people internally, you want to look at cases of transfers, promotion, new hires, recalls. All these are sources of internal hiring. So you can, internal supply of labor. So you can supply labor from transferring people from one department to another, or seconding people from one sister organization to another sister organization. Or you can promote people from one level to another level, right? Or you can recall people who you have asked to leave. It's also important that we understand that when you are creating an internal supply of labor, you are automatically creating a demand for labor in that. For instance, if you are promoting somebody from level A to level B, you are creating a vacancy in level A, right? So people can also, outflows can also happen through promotions. When people are being promoted or they are being seconded, they are leaving their current position, creating an outflow there. People can quit their jobs. So these are different things that can cause demand for labor. When people quit their jobs, when people's jobs are terminated, when people are demoted, when people are retired, when people die, when people are laid off. I think that what I want us to understand from balancing demand and supply of labor is that we need to appreciate the fact that no employee is indispensable. Anything can happen to employees and they can decide to leave, especially today. It's an old myth, the idea of job security, the idea of, oh, I've worked in this place for 20 years. These days, when you say, people are like, 20 years, looks weird today to see people who just keep working in an organization. So times have changed, right? Today's workforce, go leave work on Friday, catch a vision on Saturday, Monday, they are tendering their resignation. The idea of I want to be my own boss has become predominant today. The class of workers we have today are people who are more bold. They are bolder, they are more courageous to take on new ventures, to become their own boss, to become boss lady and boss guys, to move on to try out new things. So as HR, retaining your workforce today is more difficult, right? Because people are not afraid of moving on, right? So it's always important as HR, you consistently do a human resource planning. Now, if we're talking about human resource planning, there are limitations to human resource planning. One of them is inaccuracy of manpower prediction. If you remember, when we define human resource planning, we defined it as a process of forecasting the demand and supply of labor, right? And because you are forecasting, Forecasting means prediction. And because you are predicting, anything could happen with that prediction, and uncertainty could happen. We had that situation when we had COVID. So many organizations had already promised people that they were going to resume January 20, was it 2020 we had COVID? And then 2020 came, there was COVID, there was shutdown, people could not resume. A lot of people lost their jobs. So human resource planning is about predicting ahead, right? And because it's a prediction, uncertainty could happen. Lack of support due to cost involved in planning could be a limitation. Employees' resistance could also be a limitation. Time and expense involved in planning. All of what you have done is a plan. It's not reality. You are just planning. What if we lose? What if we are going to lose 6 people? What if we are going to, let me prepare ahead. That time may come and you may not lose that person, right? So inefficient information system can also be a limitation for HR planning. For instance, when we gave the solution to how do we attract the 4 managing directors, what we said is find out how much they are earning. In a country like Nigeria where we do not have information, it's difficult. In the Western world, you could know how much people earn based on their position without asking them. You could, on the industry level, you can know, for instance, people who have professionals who have stayed 4 years, 10 years in the industry, what's the average compensation? But it's difficult to get that information in Nigeria, right? So inefficient information can also be a limitation to HR planning. Do we have any question on HR planning? Any question on HR planning? Okay, let's go to job analysis. Okay, for us to take the topic of job analysis, I will please request us to stand up. Everyone, please, on your feet. I am going to list out, I'm going to describe certain functions, and if you would want to take this job that does what I'm going to say, please sit down, right? If you would not mind taking on this job, you want to do this job that does what I'm going to say, you can sit down. So in this job, one of the things you will be doing is welcoming customers, guests, passengers in a very nice professional way. If you want to do a job that will demand you to welcome customers, passengers, guests in a nice way, sit down. Okay. No, one by one, one by one. One by one. Okay, so nobody wants to do this kind of job. This job also requires that after welcoming them, we make sure they are well seated, their luggages, and is not blocking other customers or passengers. Talk in a very nice way so that there's a free passage. If you want to do a job that will ensure that your customers or passengers, their bags are well. Nobody wants to do that. We're going to teach her to speak fine English. Nobody. It's tempting, right? Okay, the job also requires that the job also requires that you serve them food. Okay, it requires that you serve them food, and you have to serve all your passengers food or your customers, serve them food. It also requires that after they finish eating, you have to pack up all they have eaten. Are there other options? And all of these job roles I'm listing is not appealing. I should continue. I said, we'll teach you how to speak fine English. It's not how much. The job description is much. You want to do something, to do a job, you'll be doing one thing. So, welcoming, being nice to them, serve them food, pack up after they have eaten. What? No, I don't know of washing the plate because I think I speak with English. Okay, okay, class. If so, how many people do I have sitting down? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that a guy? That's interesting. Okay. Who wants to do the job? Who wants to be an air hostess? You want to do the job of an air hostess? Sit down. So is there any difference? So in the air, but you okay? Please, no, I didn't say boss. Okay, one class. One class. Let's hear her. Come back. One class. This is very interesting dynamic. Calm down. Let's listen. Thank you. So you see that when I called the job title, we had more. So we are definite that all these people standing up is not about salary. They don't want to do the job of an air hostess. Thank you. Sit down. So I'm going to ask a question now. I'm going to ask a question. This is a very interesting dynamic, right? The things I listed, does an air hostess or air host, do they do that? Yes. Which other job title does this? A receptionist, waiters, waitress. Okay. So between the air hostess and let's take the waiter and the waiter, do we agree that they do similar things? Yes. Who gets more pay? Yes. Why are we paying the air hostess more for doing similar things to what the waitress does? Risk, okay. I agree with us when we say risk and we say, although I would differ a bit, thank you very much, I'll differ a bit on the training because there is hospitality training where as long as in a 10-star hotel, I do not think their waitresses just start without that hospitality training, right? So risk is one thing, I quite agree, right? But we see these interesting dynamics about when we broke down what the air hostess is really doing. How many of us we did not want to sit down. But some people who were able to catch it, right? So let's look at, you will better understand that when we look at what's the job analysis. Job analysis is a process of gathering information about the content of a job, the context in which a job will be performed, and the human requirements needed to perform a job. When we were breaking down the job task, what we were looking at was the content of the air hostess job. That's what we were doing. When we asked the question and we brought the factor of risk, then we were looking at the context in which they are performing their job. Now, the context in which they are performing their job will differentiate the different human requirements needed to perform that job. For instance, one of the human requirements of basic training every air hostess must have is swimming. They must be able to swim, right? Because of the context in which they will be performing their job, which is at a height. And that if there is any situation, maybe the plane falls into water, they are able to swim. Do you understand? So job analysis is about analyzing the content of a job, the context in which a job is performed, and the human requirements needed to perform a job. Doctors and nurses who seem to do more job, who do we see moving up and down? Who gets more pay? Doctors are more respected. So why does that happen? That happens because the health establishment has one mission, right? To heal people, to help for health of people. And the jobs directly responsible if anything happens to a patient, who is the first person the family runs to. So you would see that the doctors are directly, primarily responsible for lives. In a hospital, there are so many jobs. There is the cleaner, there is the laboratory technician, there is the nurse. But the life of every patient is directly handed over to who? The doctor. So the objective of that establishment informs us about the content and the context and the necessary human requirements. If you go into a legal firm, the lawyers in that legal firm are likely to get first consideration before any other role, because the objective of that legal firm is legal representation, and the jobs directly responsible for legal representation are the lawyers. If you go into probably a customer service organization, whatever they do, and you have a gardener who does a wonderful landscaping, he will not likely be paid as much as, say, the admin officer. But if we switch that scenario and you take that same gardener to a landscaping company whose objective is to beautify environment, and you take that admin officer into that organization, because they need an admin officer, right? And they also need all the gardeners. But when we switch it, you will see that the gardener is going to get more compensated than the admin officer, because the objective of that landscaping company, the jobs directly contributing to that, are the gardeners. What are we looking at? We're analyzing jobs, and we are answering questions around content of the job, context in which the job will be performed, and the human requirements needed to perform the job. That's job analysis. It's a bit, another factor to consider in job analysis is the job title. Job title is just the name we give to the title, to the job holder, to the job itself. For instance, I did not need to, just listing out those requirements, those tasks can help us say, okay, this job does this job also, the waiter, receptionist, the air hostess. These are different job titles that do similar roles. Job titling is a factor that we have to consider as HR. In schools, we no longer call cleaners. What do we now call them? Janitors. Because we want to put some pomp to the job. Does it remove what they are actually doing? No. But we want some form of esteem and ego. And does it help people do their job better? Yes. We call it air hostess because we need to give it that fine name. But when we break it down, the waitress will be rubbing shoulder with the air hostess and saying that there's nothing you are doing that I cannot do. Do you understand? When you see people who pack soak away, we no longer call it all of those bad names. What do we now call them? Waste managers. So job titling is also an important factor, right? It's a very important factor that you need to consider in jobs. You see, all of these factors come under, all of these dynamics come under what we call organizational development. And do you remember it's a scope in HR? O&D, do you remember organizational development is one of the scope in HR? Structuring an organization, what jobs should be in the organization? What titles should we have in this organization? What do we do in this organization is under O&D. And as HR is part of your work. Sometimes we don't have room for promotion up there in terms of salary, right? But these people have been working 5 years. We want to give some sense of growth. We just tweak job title. You just tweak the job title and you now call somebody a supervisor, but he's still doing exactly, or he's not even supervising anybody, but now he has been promoted to what? A supervisor. But he's really not supervising. There's no other person in his team. Or team lead, but there's nobody on his team, only him is still in that department. So when we're analyzing jobs, all of these factors have to play. And you have to consider the content, the context, and then it informs you on the human requirements needed to perform that job. Job analysis is very important because it informs you during recruitment or during hiring. If you do not analyze a job, you may not be guided on the right people to do the job. For instance, if you want to hire for a, I don't know, people who, let's take maybe a large departmental store like ShopRite, and you want to hire people who are going to load items on those shelves. What do we call them? What name do we call them? Loaders. It's not a bad idea, but do we want to give it some class? Loaders, great, but do we want to, if you were to give some class to that name, what would you want? You need to be innovative. Shelfers would sound more nice than loaders, right? Shelf managers, sweet. And somebody will be glad to be called a shelf manager than to be called a loader. Exactly. That's what will differentiate him from that person who is just carrying cement. Do you understand? So it matters. So a shelf manager. Now, in analyzing the job of a shelf manager, you want to look at the actual task. And the task requires him to take things from a ground level and stack them up to those shelves. Those shelves are most likely going to be higher than him or her. So you need to analyze the task. The task requires you, the job holder, to pick things from a ground level, lift it up, and stack them at a height. It informs us that some of the human requirements needed to perform that job will be what? Height? What again? Huh? Vibrant? What again? Speed, energetic. Thank you. What else? I think we've talked agility. We've talked about those key things: strength, height, agility. If you think that it doesn't matter and you hire somebody that is going to like me, because in the interview I sounded bright and perfect, I will come, I will pick the things from the ground, my hand will not reach up. Do you understand? So you must analyze a job in terms of the task. Why do you think air hostesses? I don't go into slimmer because recently I got on a flight and I saw some really plus size air hostesses, and it was a nice feel because I'm also plus size. I was like, see my people, see my people. But really, one of the reasons why, technical reasons why the cabin crew must be at a particular size is because of weight. If they cannot control the weight of passengers, right? But they can control the weight of the people. So, and the plane must carry a particular weight plus cargo plus people's baggage. So there's a particular weight. So at least the things within their control, they must ensure that. So that's one reason, right? But height is also a factor because they must be able to reach the cabins, because they literally have to arrange passengers' baggage into those cabins. Then they have to close. Then they have to check that everything is properly closed. One of the reasons why they do this. So imagine that somebody going to like me apply for that job. I may do like this and my hand may not reach, right? So as simple and as funny as these things look, it's all job analysis. It is when you analyze the job, you find out the human requirements needed to perform the job. Friendliness is a key human requirement for that job, any customer service related job. So imagine that you are interviewing for the job, for the role of an air hostess, and then you're interviewing this person who says, tell me about your weakness. Oh, I don't tolerate nonsense. Oh, I don't, and this person, oh, I am, my turn off, my pet peeve is, people talking to me anyhow. You will get passengers who will talk to you anyhow, right? Right? So it's a human, friendliness becomes a human requirement. But if you are hiring for the same, maybe for a data entry analyst, whose job will just be to enter data into the system. It doesn't matter if it's friendly or it's not friendly. Just enter data. Then friendliness is no longer a human requirement. So when you analyze a job, it informs you about, you analyze a job in terms of content and context. It informs you on the human requirements needed to perform the job. You're a new HR in a haulage firm, and the week you resume, 3 heavy-duty drivers resign. The next week, 2 resign, and then you now start hearing there's winch in that department. They are killing each other. HR is very real, right? But there is logic to it. There is winch in that department. That's how they keep. Nobody ever stays beyond 1 year. And on the other side, you are thinking that you are the problem because you are the newest person to the team. And you're like, maybe they prefer the former HR, they don't like you. But you decide to do a job analysis. And in analyzing their job, you find out that their job requires them to resume 8 a.m., drive those heavy duty vehicles for 8-hour stretch. And then in further analyzing, you find out that all of the people who have resigned to one health situation that related to backache or waist ache or spinal cord injury. And that's because they have to drive those heavy duty vehicles for 8 stretch hours. It is only in analyzing the job that you find out the gap about the job. And then it informs you on what solutions can we bring. And one of the solutions you could establish is to mandate a compulsory 1-hour break and insist that within that 1 hour, that department shuts down. You lock it, you take the key. Everybody go and do any other thing, right? So it is only in analyzing a job that you can find constraints about the job and improve the job. If you don't analyze a job, you can never know. So the next question is, how do you analyze a job? Because you are one person as HR. Do you know accounts? Do you know finance? Do you know customer service? Do you know procurement? Do you know? So how do you find out about jobs? How do you analyze jobs in your organization? What will you do? Research. Okay, that's one way. Ask questions. Public, so you invite everybody on that job to answer some questions. Great, so you can administer, yes, surveys and questionnaires. That's good. You can also observe. You can decide to rotate and say, this week, I'm working from the finance department. And all you want to do is just sit down and observe what they do. Observe what they do. That's all you want to do. To better understand all it takes to do their job. Right? You cannot presume or assume. For instance, if you are hiring for Princess on a plane, I'm ready, sign me up. All right, Queen, you got the job. So you want to hire for a storekeeper for two different organizations, right? In this organization A, their process is entirely automated. In organization B, they are yet to get automated. But the job title is what? Storekeeper for both organizations. In organization B, where they are not automated, it literally requires the job holder will pick items, inventories, arrange them, dust, clean up, ensure that they take inventories from department to department. In organization A, where they are totally automated, people place order, heads of department place order through a system, and the order gets to them. Everything is totally automated. But you are hiring for the same job title, two different organizations. What will be the human requirement that you will look out for the same job title for the two organizations? Computer literacy, and to be more specific, ability to use their application software, right? And that will not be a human requirement for organization B, but it's the same job title. In organization B, what other human requirements do they look out for? Somebody who can keep records and pay attention to details, that's one. There's physical strength, swiftness. I don't know how you find that out doing your selection. Are you swift? We'll discuss that next week, what you ask people during interviews. Because there's nobody that you ask, are you swift? The person will not tell you yes. So I don't know how you find out swiftness in your interview, but I wish you luck. All right, so you also want to look at the health status. This is one of the reasons why sometimes organizations ask people for medical reports before they hire you. They are not doing that because they want to know your HIV status. No, they are doing that because of what the job entails, and they are demanding for a particular kind of. For instance, if the job requires good eyesight, they want you to bring a medical record that your eyesight is good, right? Because it will only hamper you and hamper the organization if you don't have a good eyesight and the job requires you to look into something that is really bright. So all of these are some of the importance why we must conduct job analysis. When you conduct a job analysis, you come out with two outcomes: job description and job specification. So when you analyze a job, you then must be able to describe the job. I find it very funny. Some international job vacancies, you will see how they will describe, maybe there's not so much physical activity with the job, but the job requires you to lift papers, maybe from one office to another. They will describe, you are likely going to lift papers weighing 0.002 kg. You would think that these people are just being ridiculous. You'll be surprised that somebody has sued them before because they did not tell them that they were going to lift papers. So in describing a job, you need to describe everything about the job. Does this job require traveling? State it. What is the percentage of traveling? State it. Next week, when we look into recruitment, you will see how poorly defined job description has hampered recruitment. People get to the final stage, and that's when they are being told, are you aware that this job, you will stay 4 days here, 3 days here? The person tells you, I did not know. And you've gone through 5 processes. Screening, it took you 2 months to get to that stage. Only for the last 4 candidates, 2 of them to tell you, I have 2 young kids. Then the other 2 says, I have motion sickness. Then the last person says, let me go and take permission from my spouse. Waste of time. We are going to start all of that. We'll talk about all of that next week. So when you conduct a job analysis, you detail what the job entails. And then the next outcome of a job analysis is job specification. A job specification states the minimum acceptable qualification that a job holder must possess to perform a job successfully. A job specification is further divided into physical characteristics, psychological and social characteristics, mental characteristics, personal characteristics. So when you define a job, you must also define the job specification related to that job. If not, you will keep hiring misfits. Somebody may be good technically, but may be bad in terms of communication. But if it comes to fixing the wires, it's very good. But the person is hot-tempered, can use the wire to strangle someone. These things matter. So you want to check people, they say many are mad. Few are running. You want to check people's ability, general intelligence, memory, judgment, ability to concentrate, psychological and social characteristics, emotional stability, decision-making ability. So that's why you wonder why you are asked certain questions during interviews. They are not so much to you. They are not so much related to the job because you've looked at it. Is it not admin officer? Why are they asking me how to cook jollof rice? Meanwhile, it is because the role of the admin officer, this particular administrative job requires high organizational skills. And then we ask you, do you know how to cook jollof rice? And then you tell us yes. And then we ask you, tell us how to cook jollof rice. Then you are like, are these people okay? We just want to listen to your process. We want to know if you're a natural process person or if you are somebody that the end justifies the means. Because if we ask you, are you organized? What will you tell us? Yes. But we ask you an unrelated question to understand if organizational skills come to you naturally or by learning, right? So in job specification, you need to list out because each job differs, not by job title, but by what the job actually entails. An admin officer for job organization A may be different from what an admin officer in organization B will be doing. In organization A, ticketing and arranging for travels for per diems may be part of the job function. In organization B, the admin officer may just be telling customers, oh, you're welcome, please sit here, please sit here. 2 different things, but the same job title. So in job specification, you must state personal, social, emotional, mental characteristics, and personal characteristics. After stating a job specification, you now need to further categorize it into essential attributes, desirable attributes, and contra indicators. Essential attributes are a must-have. You want somebody with a BSc qualification or an MSc qualification? Do you want somebody with 2 years work experience or 0 years or 5 years? You must state it essential. Is communication skill an essential attribute or not? You must state essential, categorize desirable, and contra indicators. Any question on job analysis? So job analysis is a process of analyzing jobs in terms of the content of the job, the context in which a job will be performed, and the human requirements needed to perform that job. And when the outcome of a job analysis is a job description and a job specification. One of the outcomes of analyzing a job is that it helps us design jobs. So you are seeing here that your job as HR is more than hiring and firing, right? It goes beyond hiring and firing, does it not? So job design. When we are looking at designing a job, we're looking at how do we ensure that. Are we tired? Are we tired? Just a few people are responding. You're tired, okay. So are we taking attendance? Yes. Everyone? All right. Okay, we will stop here for today. Next week, we'll continue with job design and continue with our module 2. Thank you so much for your participation today. Those of us joining virtually, we've come to the end of the class. We'll continue next week with job design. If you have any question, feel free to put it on the chat box and I will respond. Thank you. No, we're still going to send this material. You send this way. Please also send me this material they have. I want to really see. Yes.
Back on that material because there was even a time I asked Tina to speak to you about it.
On which material?
On the Italian material.
Which one? This one or? Because it feels like they are two different things.
Yes, there are two. So what Mr. Mati shared is so comprehensive than what you spoke. But the truth is, you know, we are doing it. If it is not the same,
Then they, yes, but if it's okay if it's more comprehensive, but everything I say should be in there.
yes,
Do you understand?
yes.
I like it that it's more comprehensive, but everything I say should be in there. So we just need to just check it.
Okay, that's fine.
So just send me, since I have this one, send me that one. Let me just see.
Okay, let me also, is your WhatsApp here?
Yes.
Let me just have your number. Hello, yes. It's because of the phone number. Right, right. Yes, that's okay. Mohammed, our.
She traveled. She'll be back next week.
Oh, okay. I was thinking she was around because she usually go with this. My team is creating, wedding videos.
Okay.
So this is let me go and come out.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry. 7740 39 39. So are you going to be needing this? Because he said I should bring it.
We are almost, she's almost done. I think maybe next 15 minutes.
With this.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just wait.
bad. I took it. I took it that bad. So just take it back. That's what it is.
Okay.
Go with this.
I can go with that.
No, I mean, you can take every other thing apart from the system.
Yeah.